Fortress of Comic News, episode 164. I am one of your hosts, Chris, alongside, we're now on Zoom, Mike. It's Mike.
Whoa. Yeah, we're on Zoom today, and mostly because we have an awesome guest, Sachi, coming to the show a little bit later, and we're going to talk about his origin in comics and his awesome book, Lionborn, if you can't see behind my head here. So stick around, and yeah, we'll be getting to that cool stuff pretty shortly. Yeah, Zoom's not bad. I don't know. I've tried a lot of different web video services as of lately, Chris, but this one doesn't seem so bad. I don't know.
We just figured we'd try it because everybody else is doing it.
Because why not?
It's like cocaine. When everybody else does it, you got to do it too.
Yep. Just a slave to the ultimate, I suppose. Anyways, let's go to the TV news so we can get this awesome. I'm doing just great, by the way, Chris. Yeah, so we got some cool news about Mandalorian, which anything about Mandalorian is just cool news. Boba Fett will appear in the second season of The Mandalorian, and it's going to be played by the veteran Star Wars actor, Temuera Morrison. So yes, from the originals, the episodes 1, 2, and 3.
The prequels.
The prequels, yes. So he's coming back. There was a picture released today. I don't know if you saw our poster of like the Mandalorian, Boba Fett, and the baby Yoda in between them. So
no, I didn't see that.
Yeah, so he's like standing there with the baby, and he's like, they're just like on opposite ends. I'm like, they're meeting.
So when we saw those feet appear on Tatooine in season 1, and everybody's like, "Oh my God, it's Boba Fett." This pretty much confirms it, right? That was Boba Fett.
It has to be Boba Fett, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, and so it's kind of cool because this is the guy that played Django, right. And Boba Fett is a clone of Django, and but there's also that thing that he might be playing a second character inside the series, maybe, possibly. And the way they ended Clone Wars with a very important clone trooper getting the chip out of him and not being a slave to Order 66.
Oh.
And then the whole thing with Ahsoka Tano is supposed to be in the season 2. I really think that that's who he's playing on top of Boba Fett.
Yeah, oh man, the fans are going to be stoked. You bringing all these characters over from Clone Wars. It's awesome. That's so cool.
So I was already excited for Mandalorian. Now I'm even more excited for Mandalorian.
Yeah.
And that can kind of tie into what I watched this week. Because I watched that the first 2 episodes of that documentary that Disney did about The Mandalorian.
Mm-hmm. How was that?
It is really good. It's like they cut it into different sections of production. So the first episode is all about the directors. Mm-hmm. And then the second one was all about production people. And I'll say, if you watch nothing else in that, watch the director's one because, Favreau's in it. I can never remember the guy's name, but it's basically the head guy for Lucas Animation who does a lot for Mandalorian. And he was the big brain behind Clone Wars on top of Lucas, obviously. And then Taki, the Thor Love and Thunder director.
I can't do that, Dave.
He directs an episode, so like he's in it. Like there's a bunch of, and they have this one section where, so they're doing clips and talking about things, but the whole thing is set around a round table where they have Favreau and then whoever else is a part of that chunk. Mm-hmm. And it's just them talking about storytelling and specifically Star Wars storytelling, but just like why they fell in love with Star Wars and how they view storytelling and all that. And it's just an amazing conversation between people who are all pretty much masters at their craft, just talking about it. And I really enjoyed that portion of it. I really recommend that. I enjoyed the second episode too, but it starts to get way nerdy at that point.
Yeah, I do enjoy they do is it for the Oscars or the there's Academy Awards? They do the directors roundtable for the best pictures.
Mm-hmm.
And like this year they had like Robert De Niro sitting with Shia LaBeouf and like Tom Hanks, and I think Jamie Foxx was sitting down. It was just like this great group of people sitting down and talking with each other, and it was like everybody there was just like worshiping Robert De Niro. But it was like, it's crazy because they're all so phenomenally good, and you're like, it's so funny that they're just like, they're all like, basically like fanboying over Robert De Niro being there too. So it's cool to see that stuff.
It's also, that's his name, Dave Filoni. I really want to get his name right. He's the head director of Clone Wars. And listening to him talk Star Wars, because this is a dude who's like, I like Star Wars, but I'll shit on the prequels a little bit. And this is a dude who will like go into, he did like a 5-minute conversation about why the lightsaber fight between Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon, and Maul is a metaphor for the entire saga. Like, this dude lives and breathes Star Wars, and it was so amazing listening to him talk. So yeah,
that's awesome.
Check that show out.
And this is more of a rumor that's going around that's kind of hit the internets. We do a little bit of speculation here, but we know that HBO is doing a Justice League Dark show head by J.J. Abrams. We also have, there's some rumors going around that they need a Constantine, and they're going to bring back Keanu Reeves for Constantine, and maybe do another Constantine movie. So we don't know if that's true or not. Well, I guess we'll see and find out. I think that, they're just going to ride the Keanu train. Pretty much. I guess the Keanu bus, because he was in Speed, right? So just hop on the Keanu bus.
I'm down with that because, I had no connection to Constantine when that movie came out. Right. I barely knew that it was a comic book character at the time, fully admit that. And I love that movie still. I think it's a good movie.
It's so good, yeah. It was like a cult classic.
Yeah.
It really was. And the fact that he was Constantine, he didn't have a British accent like they run the mill now, but I think it's fine. And what better way to bring in viewers? People will sign up for HBO Max just to see Keanu Reeves, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. And then, CW can keep the Atlanta Falcons quarterback Matt Ryan as Constantine, so
yeah. They can have it. Anyways, jumping into the movie news. Thor Love and Thunder writer director Taika Waititi, I don't know, I can't do it, has signed on to write and direct a Star Wars film as announced by StarWars.com. So there's some speculation there, but he has now since joined on to write. So it's going to be awesome. Yeah, written and directed by him. We saw what he did with the Mandalorian. He did a great episode there. And what he did with Thor. So
yeah, and let him do what he wants. He's a great creator. I still need to see the Jojo Rabbit that he did. And the guy just knows movies. Like, it's very obvious from that documentary I just got done talking about, and just from watching his movies, that the dude just knows movies.
Yeah. And really quick, before we cut to the interview, I watched the first episode of Solar Opposites just because of how much it's that Justin Roiland show we talked about where Rick and Morty went on a weird break, and Justin Roiland comes out with this new show for Hulu, and now we're back to Rick and Morty. Very suspicious, but a lot of people are saying it's just like Rick and Morty. When you can get out away from he has the same voice as Rick, and he pretty much has the same attitude and motivations as Rick. Besides that, that connection there, and I'm pretty sure they live in Rick's house.
Yeah, with a spaceship on top.
Yeah, with a spaceship on top. It looks exactly like the Rick and Morty house. It's fairly good. It's like, aliens crash land on a planet. It has a little more structure to it than Rick and Morty, I guess, or a little more. I don't know if structure is the word, but
it's a little more sitcom-y.
Sitcom-y, yeah. There's a moral at the end of the story. You know what I mean? We've come full circle, and this is why you shouldn't be a bad person. Kind of reveal at the end. But it's not bad. The animation style, it's just like
it's I made this comparison to you off air, but it's, to me, it was when American Dad first came out, and I was an avid Family Guy fan. I watched that, and I'm like, that's okay, but it's not the best. it's it's Family Guy light, and that's kind of what this reminds me. It's like Rick and Morty light,
Mm-hmm.
enjoyable enough where I'll finish off. I think I watched the first 2 episodes, and I thought it was hilarious. The first episode's premise was these aliens watch a children's version of Rick and Morty.
Right. Pretty much.
But it's that to me, and it's something I'll go through. I am way more interested. I just realized that Rick and Morty came back, and it should be on my Amazon, so I'm gonna go watch that after this. But
Nice.
when there's no Rick and Morty, this would be cool to watch,
Yeah.
and we'll see how it grows too. Maybe 3 or 4 seasons, hell, maybe even 3 or 4 episodes down the line, I might be even more in love with it. But
That's what I'm hearing. I think a lot of the fans aren't really hating on it. They're kind of just like, hey, if you like Rick and Morty, check this out. You'll like it too.
yeah, not everything has to be the greatest thing ever.
Right. And we do know there's a lot of time in between Rick and Morty seasons, so that'll hold you over. This is like, I'm just announcing it now, but I think I started last week. I can't even remember. It's all a blur. I'm on season 6 of Letterkenny already, so that show is hilarious. I have to ask my friends for forgiveness for putting it off for so long, but it is a very funny show, and it's very smart at times too. So check it out if you like Canadians living in Timbuktu, pretty much.
So I think we had talked about it when you said you were going to try it.
Yeah.
Would you recommend it to somebody else? Let's say me.
Would I recommend it to you? Yeah, I would say at least give it a shot. Like, because I started it and I gave up after like the first episode. It takes a few episodes to like grow on you, and then you really start to like you start to feel for the characters and stuff, and then you realize like, wow, this isn't just a show about rambling. There's a lot of weight and structure to some of the jokes that they do.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of the seasons have a cold open with like an alliteration back and forth between characters where they go through the whole alphabet. And the way they stammer it off is just like, wow, this took hours of practice, and it's actually hilarious. But they act like idiots while they're doing it. Is the funny part too. So yeah, I think you should check it out for sure.
Okay.
Yeah. Why you don't seem too convinced?
So I probably will love it, because the same thing happened to me with Trailer Park Boys, where I watched one episode and I'm like, this is fucking stupid.
You're gonna love Letterkenny.
And now that's one of my favorite shows, and it is fucking stupid, but it's hilarious.
This is like Letterkenny is like Trailer Park Boys if they actually had educations, I guess.
Okay.
Like if they actually admitted they had school educations and like worked for a living and didn't do so many drugs. But it's just as good, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll check it out.
Check it out. So let's jump to this awesome interview with Sachi, and we'll see everybody on the other side.
And welcome back, everybody. Today we have a very special guest, and I want to tell a little story before we introduce our guests. During these times, most of us are at home doing our thing, trying to figure out what to do with ourselves. Well, our guest today took some of that time and created something. Nobody asked him to do it. He just had the need to go out there and create something, and he created a 4-page comic strip, which has then gotten him into Newsarama and all these different outlets. And it's a great story about taking this time, or taking any time you have, and just trying something, putting it out there, and maybe it gets caught into something and you get noticed. So today, welcome to the show, Sachi. Welcome to the show, Sachi.
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. I mean, I love free comics, so I mean, that's not why you're here, by the way. We haven't been bribed at all.
We all need our comics. That's the theme we've got. That's one thing we need out of this. We need free comics.
For sure, free comics all the time. But hey, man, thanks for being on the show. We'll talk about that comic in a second. We just want to get your origin story of. I know you're into film and cinema, stuff like that. So let's hear your origin story. Have you always liked comics growing up? Were you always a fan? And where did it all start for you?
Oh, yeah, cool. So I'm from Sri Lanka, so comics is not really huge in our part of the world. Like it's mainstream comics, especially. Like we just got our comic book shop, the first ever comic book shop, like 2 years ago. So
wow. Okay.
But I was familiar with the characters. I knew Batman. I knew the X-Men. Because we had the animated cartoons and all of that. So of course I grew up reading those, and at one point we had these low budget imprints that were running in the country. I'm not sure. It was imported from India, as I remember. But it took me a while. Like I used to draw as a kid, and I love storytelling. I used to write stories and all of that, but I didn't make comics per se. Then career was like I got into designing stuff. I was a graphic designer. That's how I started out. And then I went into animation and all of that. And later on, I started doing filmmaking as well as a side thing. Because as I said, I was interested in storytelling, and I started writing and directing my own short films. And those got into film festivals, and on the side I would like draw stuff. Then like I got myself a Wacom tablet and I started drawing stuff. And people are like, you can draw, why don't you try making your own comic? Like, I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. Like, so that's how I started out doing my first few comics. And then I've sort of phased out from filmmaking unintentionally, because I realized like I can create much more bigger scope stories from comics instead of like because I tried once doing something in the big in how to go a bit higher budget realm where I was like with something sci-fi stuff, but I realized it was a pain in the ass because like VFX and all of that, and then for shooting you have to go up early 5 a.m. And all of that. And of course I thought, hey, comics, that's nice. I love comics anyway, so it made sense. So I started a few pages just drawing just to get a hang of it. And then I took my time for it. Like the first book, Lionborn, it took me like 2.5 years to get done because I was doing it apart from my day job as a designer. And so that also was like a learning process because like it's crazy to think that I went directly to a graphic novel, but the truth is like there were a lot of trial and error moments for that. Like I started with 40 pages and I completely discarded them because I realized like my art had gotten better after I finished 40 pages.
You start like, drawing this graphic novel, you're like, wow, this got a lot better over time.
Exactly. So I was like, okay, it looks like I have to draw these 40 again. So and it took some time, but I'm glad I learned a lot. I learned a lot out of that. And of course, eventually self-published it. And surprisingly, the feedback was great, especially in Sri Lanka where I'm from, because no one had seen anything like it. And it's something unique from our part of the world, and it was a new voice to the industry, so that sort of thing.
So that's your book, Lionborn. Do you want to talk about that? Or give us a quick
sure
overview of the plot.
So the story is based on a Sri Lankan mythological story of sorts. It's the thing was like I wanted to write and draw a story, something based on a history, but I wanted more creative liberty. So this story is perfect because in the historical sense, like there's not much to it that's known about it. So I had the freedom to add things and make it my own, and I did that. And how I structured it was I took all the fantasy elements around it and sort of introduced a crime element to it. So the best way to describe it's a crime story set in the medieval times. It's a murder mystery plot set in medieval times. And of course all the story beats that happen in the original myth happens in this, but of course it's more structured and has a proper ending and all of that. And I always figured that it was going to be a one-off graphic novel. It won't be a series or something, because I wanted a book that could stand on its own of sorts. So that turned out well, thankfully.
So do you think that your experience with the cinema and doing the short films and stuff like that helped you in a sense? I mean, because you have to storyboard as well. So was the transition taking that story to a graphic novel, did you have issues like translating it, or was it the medium really?
Oh no, it is straightforward because as I said, I even started as a storyboard artist before getting we were starting as a graphic designer. And even with my short films, I used to storyboard my stuff regardless. And that transition really helped because, I mean, if you think about it, a comic book page itself, it's like a fancy way of storyboards. Like instead of like the 16:9 boards, I'm creating panels which are like vertical, they're all crazy, 9-panel grids.
Right.
So I'm just playing around with the panel sizes. But if you think about it, it's just storyboards with dialogue on the page itself. So in that sense, I really understood because I had, again, as I said, as I directed my own stuff, I had an understanding of visual language where like I knew how to portray stuff, how to express something just by the visuals itself. because even in my short films, they were non-dialogue films, because I
Mm.
want to do it in that way so anyone in the world could understand them. And
Okay.
those played in few film festivals around the world at the time. So I understood, like, okay, I understand this. I can bring this into comics for sure. And that's how it rolled out of sorts.
So like the cinematography was a language to you, pretty much, that everyone can understand almost, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's the beauty of any visual medium,
Yeah.
I guess.
that's awesome.
Yeah, that's something a lot of artists in comics don't really look into, is that you are kind of the director of photography for the book as well as the artist and framing everything. So that had to help a ton in creating this.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So speaking of stories without dialogue, lo and behold, this Newsarama article that dropped was, I think, today. But so what did you do there with Magneto? And I mean, I checked it out as well. It was pretty awesome. But can you talk about that a little bit?
Oh yeah, for sure. So the funny thing was, after I did Lionborn, I did few short comics, like
Mhm.
just which 4-page stuff, which I did release online. But I never thought of doing a non-dialogue comic. Like, it never. I mean, I thought about it, but I was like, would people like this or not? And like, because you have the doubt, because lettering is part of the comic book medium. Like, you
Right.
just like, and I was not sure about it. So as you said, the pandemic happened, and I had some time. Like, and it started out. There's an artist on Twitter. His name is Ian Laurie, and he has done a few Kickstarter books and stuff. And he did this sample Doctor Strange page,
Mhm.
and it was like this 1-page thing. And he was like, "Hey, why don't anyone else try this? Like, since we are all at home." So it started like that. I created this 1-page Magneto thing, dot
Mhm.
thing, and then like posted it. I really liked it, and I just expanded it to a full 4-page story.
Mhm.
And when I started it, I realized I was not going to put dialogue in it. I like let the panels tell the story. I was adamant about it.
Mhm.
So yeah, it worked out. It worked out, and I'm really happy that it reached so
Yeah.
many people.
Yeah. I know everybody's talking about it. It's awesome, but to me, that's pretty cool, especially like a character Magneto.
Mhm.
I mean, you get the same run of those stories, and Chris is reading X-Men right now. And um, is there any other characters that you'd want to like take like that and just do? Uh, who else do you think you could do like that? A story without dialogue? Like who
Oh,
would be
that's
another character?
interesting.
Yeah.
I did one more, but with the character called Armor, but it didn't go as viral as Magneto, I guess, because Magneto is much more well known, of course, whereas
Right.
Armor was
Yeah.
very.
Mhm.
So, funny enough, I've been thinking about it and not thinking about it because I need to do some of my own comics as well.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
I don't, I really don't want to get sucked into the bubble like, where I spend all
Yeah.
my time doing X-Men comics, unlicensed X-Men comics,
Yeah.
and
Right. Yeah. There's not a whole lot of money to be made there.
exactly, and it's not like I can print these into a book and sell them at a con or something.
Right.
Be
Right.
good.
Yeah.
So, but, yeah, as to answer your question, like, if I had to do another character, I like to say Psylocke or something. Yeah, Psylocke
Oh,
sounds.
yeah,
That's one
that
of my
would be
favorite
cool.
characters. Yeah.
So when doing this, like you're doing kind of a like a practice run or whatever you want to call it, and you put it out there. And did you ever expect that like it would blow up to what it was, and everybody on Twitter would be reading it, and then you get articles and all these websites talking about it, or was it just for you like this would be fun while we're sitting at home doing nothing?
No, not at all. Like, I just put it up, and then it just blew up, as you said. Like, I did not expect that, and
Awesome.
really it was surprising. And it's to be honest, it's the most liked tweet of mine so far.
Mm.
So it is nice to see that. The thing, as an artist, like, it's good to see people reacting to your work sometimes, like, especially now since the convention season is down and you have no way to gauge that, whereas you don't meet your fans whatsoever right now. So putting content online is the best way to find about that, and to see people reacting to work positively in that sort of sense. Like, of course, thousands of tweets go viral every day, at least a couple of hundred. So,
Mhm.
I mean, it's good to see that your content is somewhat worth of something. So, I
Yeah.
think it worked out well.
So you kind of touched on this there, but did you notice afterwards? Have you been selling more Lionborn, or did we get more people contacting you about stuff, or just fans saying like, "Wow, I've discovered this and love your work," or has it kind of built your audience a little bit more just from this this weird moment of a viral tweet?
Oh yeah, like people reached out to me, of course. Like some creators I love as well. Like they really liked it, and people contact me to do collaborations and stuff.
Cool.
But yeah, I mean, the other thing was like, uh, I realized like it's important. I said like putting your stuff out there and realizing to check what works and what doesn't. Like now it's great that my second, and it's not great. It's like it's a lesson. Like my next one didn't go viral as the last one. Otherwise, it would have been like repetitive. Like I think I might have learned okay what I did wrong, and not wrong. There's nothing wrong. It's just like maybe there's certain things to do to get that sort of reaction. But as I said, yeah, it worked out, and folks reached out, and of course because the convention season is not going on and there's nothing much. Lionborn didn't sell much because I only do that at conventions. I sell it in person. I don't have it online at the moment because, of course, postal services are down as well.
Yep. So yeah, that's definitely got to hurt you too, with not being able to sell them. But if you do get them online, we'd love to know where you're selling them from. So
oh yeah, for sure. I'll let you know. Yeah.
Yeah. It's definitely it's hurt us too. This con season slowing down, and so are you illustrating full time or how? Is that
no? I work in advertising as a designer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so comics is something I do on the side, and of course, like although I say it's on the side, truth be told, I put the same amount of work to it just as I do for my day job.
Exactly.
Yes.
To the point, my supervisor at work, my boss at work, he started making fun of me. He keeps questioning, "Are you sure that this is your day job or it's comic?"
Especially when he sees a Newsarama article.
Exactly.
It's like, what's going on here?
Like, of course, I'm fortunate to have. I mean, I'm working from home right now, and when I log in, he's like, "Oh, thank you for coming to your day job." And like, yeah.
That's awesome. And before we go, obviously we're going to talk about where to send the fans and stuff, but we got to talk about the Mad Max poster behind you because you're so big into film and cinema. Mad Max Fury Road is one of my favorite films. And I think I saw it at least, I don't know, 20 times in the theater. I'm not even joking about that. I went there quite, because that was a movie for me. Mad Max Fury Road, you had to see in the theater almost. I mean, there was something about that. And I don't know if you agree with that or not, because I mean, we just talked about how, you can transition films to comic books, but there's something said about that movie specifically and how impactful was seeing it in a theater. I don't know if you felt the same way about it.
Yeah, I think now that you mentioned it, I think how George Miller wrote this film was storyboards. I think if my memory serves right, he didn't write a script. Right. He storyboarded this entire sequence because if you think about it, structure-wise, it's a chase sequence that happens with, of course, their story beats and whatnot. But ultimately, it's a chase movie.
Yeah, for like an hour and a half.
If I remember right, George Miller did storyboard this entirely, and then he shot it. Yeah. And of course, it's a great film. And like I remember seeing the preview sequence. It was a teaser, which was like a 10-minute extended preview, and I was not expecting to see that in the theater. And when I saw it, I was like so pumped, like man, I was like this throughout the movie. And then I went and watched the actual thing, and my gosh, the pure energy it had. Like and it's so good.
It's funny and kind of ironic that you had the poster behind you because we're talking about comics without words. And I recently saw an article about that movie that I think it was both main characters had less than like 70 lines of dialogue or something like that. Okay. Yeah, so if you go back and you look at how many lines of dialogue Furiosa and Max had, it was like the fewest out of any of the characters. And it was something we said about like George Miller, put these famous people in roles and didn't have them talk at all. You know what I mean? And like the stories and people were like, it was an amazing movie. But I mean, there's no dialogue, right? So it's still an amazing movie without it. That's why you can still have a really good comic without dialogue, I think, too. About the art.
I think it's a kind of movie where you could just shut off the audio and even still realize what's going on.
Right. Yeah.
Like
there's certain movies you probably can't do that, but
yeah, of course.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. You can't do that with Parasite.
Yeah, I was just thinking that Parasite would be like, what the hell happened? How did we get here?
That's
be
true.
very confused. Like, what is there someone in the basement? What did this? I thought that was the maid. What happened? Yeah. So let's just really quick. I mean, Chris and I always do a wrap up every year of like we don't talk about movies a lot on the podcast.
Okay.
But if you just had like I don't know recent top 3 films that you that you've watched or think are of note, I think that'd be cool to hear from you.
All right. I haven't watched Fury Road in a few months. So does that count? Or
Yeah, I mean, if you want to do like top 3 films of all time, or like I don't know,
oh, okay. All
decade
right.
or so. I mean, yeah, we could do it within the decade.
All right. Okay. So Fury Road goes in for sure.
Yeah.
Then Spider-Verse.
Which
Into the Spider-Verse.
Yeah, Into the Spider-Verse. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that was really good. Yep.
Then something more recent. I think I'd say Parasite. I really like that
Yeah,
film. I really like it.
Crazy.
Other than that, I loved Invisible Man.
Oh yeah, that was a recent one that I watched. That was really good. Chris doesn't do so well with like horror thriller films. I told him it wasn't that scary.
That's the thing. Even I don't do well with horror at all. I didn't know it had horror elements to it, so whatever happened, it came as a surprise.
Right.
But still, I really liked how they approached it, and the director's earlier movie Upgrade, that was so good as well.
Oh, I haven't seen Upgrade.
Oh, that was pretty good. That's pretty good.
And Into the Spider-Verse, the animation was just amazing.
Oh yeah.
I like my movies to have spaceships and lightsabers.
There you
go. He's a simple man. Just okay. So to bring everything back on track, where can we send everyone if they want to see what you're up to and all your amazing art that you have online?
Oh, for sure. I'm on just my art. I'm on Instagram as Root345,
okay,
and of course on Twitter as Root345art.
Okay.
So those are 2 main avenues that I post my stuff and post updates. Of course, I've got my next book coming up whenever convention season resumes.
Oh, can we talk about that at all? Or?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
It was featured on Newsarama as well.
Okay.
The preview went on over there. So it was it's a sci-fi graphic novel called Wayfinder, and it's about a mother who crash lands to Earth in search of a daughter. I'd say it's a cross between Rogue One and not Fury Road. Yeah, it's my version of Rogue One, I'd say. And it was supposed to launch at Emerald City Comic Con this year, and of course it got postponed. So whenever convention season resumes, hopefully I'll be able to get on that.
Well, you heard that, Chris. It's Star Wars style, so there you go.
I'm in.
There's no lightsabers though, so I don't want to disappoint the fans.
There weren't many lightsabers. There was one lightsaber for like 3 minutes in Rogue One, right? So
there you go. Yeah.
He still enjoyed it.
That's 3 minutes of cinema.
That's right. That sequence was pretty dope.
Yeah, it was awesome. That like cranked it up to 11 in the movie.
Exactly.
Have you looked more into putting these on your website and trying to get them out to a larger crowd, or are you really just kind of into the whole con scene and keeping them going that way?
Truth be told, because Lionborn was my first book, as I said, like I hadn't explored the whole putting it on a website and stuff. So I might explore it more with my next few books. Now, Wayfinder, of course, is there, and I'm trying to work on another book. Like I'm still working on it, plotting it and all. And let's see how things go, because right now I don't think, because with what's going on, everyone's going through rough times. So when hopefully things get back to normal, and let's see when that happens, what I could do.
Makes sense.
As I said, it's even a learning process for me, truth be told.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we're kind of learning day by day here. So
exactly.
So yeah, when we know more about that, we'll share it with everybody out there. Sachi, thanks so much for being on, man.
Thank you.
I just gotta say that the Eric Shore, it's 4 pages, but it's 4 wonderful pages, and I'm glad that it introduced me to you, because not only is the art fantastic, but just you can tell you have a knack for that storytelling, and it's great to have more people like you out there. So thank you again for being on the show, and we'll have you again on sometime.
No worries. Thanks for having me as well.
Yeah.
And we're back.
Awesome. So please check out Root345, Twitter and website for it. And we'll love to have him back when we can start talking about the new graphic novel and how he's distributing it and stuff like that. So with that, Chris, I think we'll jump into the comic book news. What do you think?
Sure, why not?
Yeah, so we're going to start off on a solemn note here. Longtime comic book inker Juan Velasco has passed away April 24th due to complications from an appendicitis operation, which is not what you were probably expecting about COVID-19, but it's still very sad to hear that he passed away due to complications from that. I mean, he was in the industry for quite a while.
Yeah, and I'm just looking up. He's done a bunch of the recent Avengers stuff. He did the recent Avengers Weekly. He's done Miss Marvel. I mean, so he was working fairly recently, and it's always tough. Like I don't want to disrespect inkers because they're an important part of the industry. But it's always tough with inkers because we always talk about pencil art,
right?
And how much we love pencil art, but like. He's done stuff he's done books that I don't care for, and he's done books that I love, and it's it just goes to show that like an inker is not only beholden to the style of the penciler, but just kind of brings it more into shape for what it can be. And hats off to him, and thoughts out to his family, because he wasn't that old, was he?
The thing about inkers to me too is, I mean, we even talk when we get artists on the show. It's an experienced inker. You can't replace it with just a new and upcoming inker. It's more of an experience gig where, like, especially when you're handling someone's art and you don't want to make it your own too much, but you also want to accent what they're doing. At least from what I've realized with just interview, it's everybody does the Ben Affleck joke. Oh, you're just coloring the pages. But
just a tracer.
You're just a tracer. Yeah, you're just tracing it. But there really is more weight to it, and they're both physically. I mean, they're inking the page, but also with the art style, they have to transition between all these different art styles, and then gets colored after that. And even like the way you ink it can translate to the story as well. I mean, there's a lot that goes on there.
Yeah, like after I think the first I want to say this correctly, high profile inker we had was Glapion, and talking with him on the process and what to do, and like you really saw that he brings more depth to what the line artist is trying to do. I think that's the best way to put it. And I looked it up, and yeah, Juan Vasquez was fairly young. He was only 51 years old. So
yeah, very sad.
Yeah, very sad.
All right, let's jump into hopefully some more uplifting news. For over 2 years, best-selling writers Jeff Lemire and Matt Kindt and internationally acclaimed artist David Rubin have worked in secret on an all-new original graphic novel, the book titled Cosmic Detective. Awesome. I love the name already.
I'm in already. Like, you don't have to say any more. I'm in.
Yeah. You said Jeff, and I was like, here's my checkbook. Yeah, it's an epic science fiction mystery that asks, when a god is murdered, who solves the crime? Awesome. That is so cool. Yeah, I need to see it now. I need to read it.
Yeah, I'm down. I think I got to check Kickstarter when I'm done with this, but I'm pretty sure I already contributed to it.
Nice.
Yeah, Jeff Lemire. You had me at Jeff Lemire.
Right.
I like Dave Rubin's art. I've never actually read a book that he's done, but I've seen him throughout my travels. And Matt Kindt is actually a guy who I've never read a whole lot from. I think he's been more of a DC guy.
Yeah, and Mind Management, Mind MGMT.
Yeah, and I actually have that book Bang that he did. Issue 1 came out before the apocalypse, and I have a copy. That's a book I want to read because it's about super spies. And I want to check that out, but he seems to be a prolific guy that people love too. So what I'm saying is this book looks awesome. Go check it out on Kickstarter.
I definitely will be backing it. Scout Comics joins DC and Alterna and are going to start shipping directly to retailers. So it seems to be the tides are turning.
So I since our last episode, had a conversation with my local retailer about all of this business, mostly because I want to get Tinseltown, and I'd prefer to get my books through him to support him. So I was talking about this whole direct to retailer thing and how it goes, and he gave me kind of the retailer's perspective of it. Basically, DC does it. Cool. It pretty much doesn't matter what the store is. You're going to order a bunch of DC stuff. I mean, that's going to be a big chunk of your audience. And if Marvel did it, same. He said the thing with Alterna and some of these other ones that are saying they're going to do it is that unless he can get X amount of people into it to buy books, the shipping alone kills him. Like, he loses money. So in short, I can't get my Alterna books through him. And this was kind of one of the things that I had hinted at when this was first announced with Alterna, that I didn't think it was a good idea for that reason, because through Diamond he can get the one Alterna book and he makes it, you know, I know they're cheap books, but he makes his money off of it and we move on. With this, I have to find another way to do it, and I'm sure Scout Comics is the same, because Scout Comics is I read a few of their books, but their big book is like Stabbity Bunny.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's not doing Superman numbers. So
I mean, the whole point of having Diamond distributors was there to make the industry make things easier. And like you said, DC and Marvel, and so I don't know. You might see these indie people going back to Diamond fairly quickly.
And it's like I said, if let's say Alterna, they open up their direct market thing to Scout and then to whoever else out there, and they have like a decent chunk of publishers doing direct through Alterna, I could see doing that. But unless you're DC or Marvel, I mean, not a ton of people are going to go and do your direct thing for only your books. They'd rather go through something like Diamond. And it's not to say that there shouldn't be competition for Diamond. I believe there should be, but I don't know if that is the answer, that have just a direct, because shipping is expensive. And when you're only making 30 to 40% off your books, and you're talking Alterna $2 books, and DC or most others like $3 to $4 books, it's not like you're getting rich.
Exactly.
So
with that, let's just jump into what we read this week. I finished all 3 volumes of Children's Vampire Hunting Brigade. Great 3 volumes, and by David Lucarelli. Check it out, and like he says on our show a few episodes ago, it's like a Buffy the Vampire Slayer. It is. There's some risque drama between characters that are liking each other, but there's also vampire hunting. So it was cool, and I'd be curious who wants to continue the story at all, because it kind of leaves it on a cliffhanger. I also I have the Gem World Volume 1. I'm going to read that. I got it for pretty cheap. Chris is laughing right now. Not something I would normally read from DC, and I think Gem World sucks from my last experience with it back in the New 52. So I picked it up. I read through first couple issues, I think, and it's not bad. I mean, I can't really relate to the character, but you find out about the Gem World and how there's other like rulers, and how the main character, she has like a split personality that goes between Earth and the Gem World. So, but there's all different leaders, I guess, and there's some type of war or some type of bad thing going on, and I'm interested to see where the story goes. But it's not bad. Finishing up Dark Arc Volume 1, almost done with that. Pretty much the wizard that runs the Dark Arc is just getting everybody settled down, but they had that giant attack from the vampires from below the ship, so that was pretty cool. The book's it's a Cullen Bunn book, but it's very cinematic. Like, I can see this becoming a TV show, like tomorrow. And I had one more. No, I think that was it. And I'm still reading the monsters book, but I haven't finished that yet either. So, what do you got, Chris?
So I should have done this earlier in the show, but I wanted to say, like, a lot of publishers are putting out free stuff digitally right now. And I've been picking up a ton of free stuff. Marvel's been really good about it. They've been swapping out like entire trades on Comixology.
Oh,
And Dark Horse as well. Dark Horse is a ton of stuff. From like original Mass comics to X comics to Hellboy comics to whatever. So they have a ton of stuff as well. So anybody out there that's looking for something to read, there's free stuff out there. And then another thing that I do fairly consistently, and this is actually how I got all of the boys to be able to read, is Humble Bundle. So right now on Humble Bundle, you can go on there and spend $18 and get every single issue, including the original graphic novel and the free comic book day issue of The Walking Dead for $18.
that's pretty crazy.
Yeah. So I now have a digital backup of Walking Dead because why not? And then if you've never done it before, there's a slider on there where you can choose where the money goes. It can go to Humble Bundle, it can go to Image, or it can go to the to a charity, and I forget the exact name, but it's the same charity that like Jim Lee's been giving money to, and DC's been giving money to help out comic book retailers. So go there because that's a lot of comics for $18.
Oh yeah.
So this week I read Star Wars Dr. Aphra #1, which launched last Monday for Star Wars Day, and it's another Star Wars book that's going to take place right after Empire Strikes Back. Shelley Aphra finds her new crew. They're going to go on look for another artifact. It's what you expect from Dr. Aphra, but I really like the art for this time, and we were introduced to a couple new characters as well that are a part of her past that are going to be important parts of this arc. I like Dr. Aphra. I think it's a fun character. It's Lady Indiana Jones in space. What could go wrong? Swamp Thing New Roots #2. So that was released last Sunday, but it came out I don't know. Comixology is weird, so I didn't see it until later after we recorded. And it's a story about Swamp Thing and this family that lives in the swamp and their relationship, and then how they Swamp Thing gets backstabbed by one of the kids in the family because they need money. It's a great Mark Russell story. I really love what he's doing with Swamp Thing, and I'm excited to see if they're going to release #3 tonight. And then Batman: The Adventure Continues Part 3. So in this, we still have that mystery of who the character was at the end of Part 2, who I'm pretty sure is Jason Todd. And Deathstroke shows up. But Deathstroke shows up kind of differently than you'd expect. He comes and helps out the Bat family. They're fighting Clayface, and he just pops up and helps them defeat him. And just basically collects intel on them and tries to get them psychologically to go against each other. And then you find out at the end that it's Deathstroke. He's going to try to kill them. That book's fun. I like it. I'm going to keep reading it.
Cool.
Aquaman Deep Dives #3, another one of these DC Daily books. A very simple story about Aquaman in New York City fighting a serpent. I mean, there's not a whole lot to it, but it's fun watching Aquaman fight a giant serpent in New York City. And then I dived into some old Kickstarter books that I've had sitting around that I have not read, and I pulled one out called Nomad. So it's Nomad #1, which is basically Sons of Anarchy in the post-apocalyptic future.
Cool.
It's all about this biker gang, and there's these weird mutated creatures that are all around Earth, and they're just kind of doing their thing as these creatures are coming around. Mm-hmm. The art is really cool. The story was fun. It's one of the characters, the Nomad. If anyone's watched Sons of Anarchy or knows motorcycle culture, that's somebody who's a part of the group but just goes out on his own and lives from place to place and doesn't really have a singular place where he stays all the time. And that's kind of the guy we're following. So I really enjoyed it. It was like I said, it was a Kickstarter book. I don't know when we're going to get issue 2, but it's a cool book with some great art. And I'm a sucker for that, motorcycle culture stories. Love Sons of Anarchy. I've got Days Gone sitting around here somewhere to play on PlayStation. Like that stuff just always clicks with me, probably because I grew up around it. And then because I'm getting ready for the new volume, I read American Vampire Volume 6 and 7.
Nice.
If you haven't read American Vampire, it's great. I'm not a big vampire guy, but this is the first book that Scott Snyder. This is the book that put Scott Snyder in my purview. And it's just a cool book about a cowboy who becomes a vampire, and it's the first American vampire. And in these 2 volumes, you get kind of more of the history of where vampires come from. Skinner, the lead character, goes down to hell at one point and has to escape. There's a new like demonish vampire out there that they have to fight. And I like that every volume of it takes place in a new era. So volume 7 actually takes place in like the 60s.
Oh.
And Skinner's is basically Easy Rider, so he's like a old style biker. Let's go back to the biker theme.
Yeah.
In volume 6, like half of it is the anthology they released, which has stories by Gail Simone, by Jason Aaron, by Jeff Lemire, by a bunch of people, and it's like 4 to 6 page stories about vampires in different times. And there's some pretty great ones and some pretty raunchy ones in there as well. The one that sticks with me is there's one in the 20s or 30s. It was old-timey Hollywood, and this director finds this girl, says, hey, I can make you a movie star. And then you kind of get to this point where he's like, well, I'll make you a movie star, get down on your knees. And it cuts away, so you know what's happening there. But she gets her revenge later because she ends up becoming a vampire, finding the 2 guys that did that to her and cutting their heads off and then sticking their heads between their legs. Nice. So you get an idea of what she did there.
Yeah.
But it's quick stories like that were just satisfying. I believe that one's Gail Simone. Surprise, surprise. And that's just a great series. Everybody should check it out, even if you don't like vampires. It's really cool.
Well, I'll definitely check it out.
So, Mike, now that I've talked for an hour, where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me at Fortress Ricker on Twitter. Where can they find you and/or the show and your website?
Well, they can find me at Fortress Chris on Twitter or chrisrunt.com. That's CHRISRUNDT.com. And then the show, fortresscomicnews.com. That's where everything we do is posted. So go there and check that out. If you are listening to us, 5-star reviews, no more, no less, 5 stars. Helps us reach more ears, and I am very happy that we have as many as we do right now. Thank you all.
Yes.
And if you are watching us, like, subscribe, share, and comment down below. I always forget comment.
Yeah.
So everybody stay safe this week. Be good, and thank you so much for listening. We will definitely see you all next week.
Goodbye.